invite Dr. Neeta Bhargava to start today's presentation. As we can all see, the agenda for today's webinar is very crisp and brief. We start with the essentials of nutrition program, followed by how to identify children with malnutrition, how to assess and how to monitor them, and finally following it up with partners perspective, where Dr. Subodh Singh would be sharing his experience in the domain of nutrition for children with cleft. Over to you, Dr. Neeta.
Thank you, Ishani ji. Good afternoon, good evening, one and all. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude towards entire Smile Train team for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this nutritional program. So I will be covering nutritional program outline as well as early identification of malnutrition, its assessment and monitoring. Next, please. So what are the prerequisites for any nutritional program to implement? Teamwork is required. So we have to have one ideal nutrition team that consists of surgeon, pediatricians, nutritionalist or counselor. And for giving counseling, for doing counseling and for nutritional assessment, we have to have counselors and dietitians. So feeding counseling is required. Nutritional assessment is required, monitoring of malnutrition, anthropometric parameters, and management. So, and we at the same time, we have to see the infrastructure availability also, because we have to have space for counseling and demonstration and safe space for safe storage of feeding materials and equipments for nutrition. So these are the prerequisites for any nutritional program. So what is the rationale? First 1000 days of life are very critical for maximum cognitive growth. Far-reaching consequences of malnutrition includes physical and intellectual stunting, limiting growth, development, and life opportunities at later date. Child born with cleft are more vulnerable and their chances of recovery is very less. So many malnourished children are unable to receive complete treatment due to lack of timely support and feeding counseling. There is a need to empower health practitioners and caregivers to identify malnutrition and provide effective intervention to ensure timely cleft surgery. So this is the rationale of our nutrition program. If we see the outline of a nutrition program in a flow chart, whenever a child comes with cleft lip or cleft palate, then it is our duty to detect the growth and nutrition of the baby. And if the baby is absolutely normal, anthropometric parameters are within normal limit, and there is no micronutrient deficiency, then we can directly plan the surgery. But if there is low birth weight, low weight, low height, or less mid upper arm circumference, or if we are finding some nutritional deficiency, then these parents need counseling for growth and nutrition of the baby. So what is counseling? What to give, what to tell them? The counseling is regarding what to feed the baby, how to feed the baby, what should be the frequency of the feeding, and we should advise about proper hygiene and safe water. And we should provide them reference material, handouts in the form of handouts and flyers for their information. And we have to have feeding support group just for maintaining lactation, because it is very difficult in cleft babies to maintain lactation. And if direct breastfeeding is not possible, then we should advise mother regarding express breast milk and how to continue lactation by expressing the breast milk. Breast milk is required till 6 months of age. After that, along with the breast milk, complementary feed or supplementary feed we start. So that advice also we should give parents about the child. Then feeding implements and medicines, vitamin D supplementation, calcium supplementation, and iron supplementation after 3 months, or anything else if a nutritional deficiency is there. Then after advising, we should monitor the child's progress. We should track record of child's progress initially weekly and then monthly. We take all anthropometric parameter in each visit, especially weight, and we see the nutritional deficiency signs. And if child is improving, then we can plan for the surgery. So again, here teamwork is required, and this team consists of surgeon, pediatrician, and dietitian or counselor. Next, please. Now we see the types of malnutrition. There are three forms. One is undernutrition. Whenever weight for age is less, this is known as underweight. Whenever height for age is low, it is stunting. And when weight for length or weight for height is low, it is wasting. There is another form of malnutrition that is known as hidden hunger. That means there are deficiency of many micronutrients. And these micronutrients includes iron, zinc, iodine, vitamin A, B, C, D, E, and folic acid. So it's very important to identify these deficiencies. Now, another form of malnutrition is overweight and obese. This is due to imbalance between energy intake and energy expenditure. Nowadays, it is also increasing because of lifestyle changes. In Asia, malnutrition is most commonly manifested in the form of undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies. Next, please. If we see the life cycle approach, from the day of conception to second birthday, that means 270 days in intrauterine life to 730 days after that. That means total 1000 days are very important for the child's development, because maximum brain growth development occurs during this period. 20% of the body weight is achieved by 2 years. 50% of height is achieved by 2 years, but 80% of brain growth occurs by 2 years. We can see here dendritic arborization at birth and at 2 years of age. Tremendous increase is there. So this shows the brain development. And this picture is also showing the critical period of 1000 days where neurons divide, cerebellar neurons divide, and other cells divide, especially glial cells. And malnutrition causes structural changes in the cells, and especially there is decrease in glial cells in malnutrition. That is that we should know. And this is the period in which any nutritional insult can lead to this disastrous consequences. So this is a very critical period, and this period is the foundation of wellness and illness. Next, please. So this is a critical window of opportunity to prevent malnutrition. Actually, we can see in this chart 6 to 7 months period. And this is the period where malnutrition sets in. This graph is showing stunting. This is showing underweight. So because till 6 months of age, child is absolutely on mother milk, or milk is the mainly diet. But after that, milk is not sufficient. We have to introduce complementary food during this period. So this is the time when the child is very vulnerable for malnutrition. Undernutrition maximally occurs in first 2 years of life. And if linear growth failure is there, there will be it results in stunting. That is also dangerous. So if we provide proper nutrition in first 1000 days, there will be optimal growth, less infection, better immunity, reduced risk of chronic conditions like diabetes mellitus and hypertension in later life, and chances of breaking cycle of poverty is also there. Next, please. Now, breastfeeding. Total development of child is influenced by genetic, environmental, and nutritional factors during development of the brain. The most important phase of neuronal proliferation and migration occurs in the intrauterine period. Hence, antenatal care of mother's nutrition is very much essential. So we should take care of mother's nutrition during antenatal period. And after the birth, breast milk is the only complete diet of the baby. In fact, it is elixir of life for the baby because it provides complete nutrients to the baby, and it has anti-infective property and growth factors, which is not there in any other milk. So this prevents the baby from getting infection from other diseases. Colostrum, in fact, is the first vaccine which is rich in protein and immunoglobulin. And that's why it is called first vaccine of the baby. So we should provide breast milk to the baby, in all type of baby, even in our cleft babies also. Next, please. And what is the WHO recommendation? WHO recommends to start breastfeeding as early as possible within just after the birth, and it should absolute breastfeeding should be continued till 6 months of age. After that, it should continue along with the complementary food. In this diagram, we can see the latching on the breast. What is the mechanism of breastfeeding? Whenever child latch properly on the breast, it makes a proper seal over the areola of the breast. And because of this seal, vacuum is created. And because of the vacuum, suction is, he can suck the breast milk from the milk glands towards the mouth. So this is the mechanism: sealing, then vacuum is created, and then by suction, it draws the milk from the milk glands. This is the normal mechanism of breastfeeding. But what happened? What is there in cleft lip and cleft palate babies? The seal is not formed because of the cleft. And because of this, vacuum is not created. And because of this, suction is not created, and they are not able to draw milk from the milk glands. So this is the problem with cleft lip and palate babies. So we should provide proper vigorous counseling of the mother to maintain lactation, because if child is not taking direct breastfeeding properly, or if mother is not expressing the milk, then there will be chances of lactation failure. So we have to give complete benefit of breast milk to the baby. Next, please. There are different positions of breastfeeding, but in cleft lip and palate babies, there is difficulty in direct breastfeeding because of the cleft. If mother and child is comfortable with any position in which baby can take that breastfeed, she should continue that feeding for giving direct breast milk. But it is not possible in all cases. So these are two positions: dancer hand position, and second is modified football hold position. These two positions are slightly better in cleft babies to take direct breastfeeding. But in spite of these positions also, sometimes in large cleft, it is difficult to maintain direct breastfeeding. So in those situations, we advise mother regarding expressing breast milk and giving this EBM or express breast milk with bowl, cup or spoon. And mother can also express milk directly into the child's mouth in a bowl or in a bowl or a cup. The most common techniques here is the dancer-handed modified football hold. Next, please. So this is the spoons. This is Pallade spoon, and this is cup feeding, by which we can give express breast milk to the baby. But we should ensure that baby should be held at 45-degree angle, so that it prevents the chances of aspiration. And we should be careful while giving Pallade spoon feeding or with cup feeding, that we should not flood the pharynx with milk. Otherwise, there will be high chances of aspiration. We should pour the milk slowly. And if EBM is not possible, or if it is not sufficient, then we can consider breast milk substitute. Next, please. So these are devices. This is known as obturator for cleft palate patients. And this is long teat specialized bottle. Normally, we don't recommend bottle feeding, but in very rare situations where baby is not taking with katori spoon feed or cup spoon feeding, then we can recommend this, but we should ensure proper hygiene. But normally, we don't recommend bottle feeding. Next, please. Now, after 6 months, mother's milk is not sufficient to provide wholesome nutrients to the baby. So we have to add supplementary diet in the after 6 months onwards. This food pyramid is showing all food components and all food groups also. And this is the group of cereals and pulses that should be taken in higher amount. Then comes fruits and vegetable group, then animal products, and then fats, oil, sugar, and salt. They should be taken in very small quantity. So these all food components should be introduced in the child's diet from 6 months to 1 year, one by one. So what is the principle? One new item at a time, and you give that food item in increasing quantity. And if child is tolerating well, then we can add another new food item. So slowly we introduce different food items, and all food items should be in properly mashed form. And to start with, they should be in liquid in consistency, and slowly we increase the consistency from liquid to semi-solid. We can make the baby's food energy dense by adding oil, sugar, jaggery, or butter in the food. We add supplements like vitamin D. This is a recommendation. 400 international unit of vitamin D should be given to all babies from birth to 1 year, and iron from 3 months onwards. But if the child is preterm or premature, and if he needs extra supplement, then we can add calcium and other multivitamins also, according to the condition of the baby. And we should ensure proper hygiene and proper hand wash techniques. Next, please. Now we learn ABCDE of nutritional assessment parameters. Now A stands for anthropometry. And this is a very important, valuable tool. In fact, it is gold standard for assessing growth of the baby. Then B stands for biochemistry. That in biochemistry, we evaluate the baby by investigation: serum albumin, hemoglobin, sepsis screen, liver profile, serum electrolytes, according to the baby's condition. Then C stands for clinical assessment. Clinical assessment is very important because whenever child comes in OPD, we should search for the deficiency signs, micronutrient deficiency signs, and early detection of malnutrition is very, very much important. Visible wasting, pitting edema, signs of micronutrient deficiency. Then dietary history, use of supplements, adequacy of diet. Then E stands for environment. It is also very important. If the environment is relaxed, cheerful, then the baby's holistic growth, that means physical and mental growth, is proper. But if there is any change in the environment, if it is not stimulating at all, then along with the mental growth, physical growth also changes. Now we come to anthropometry part. In less than 2 years, we take length, and more than 2 years, we take height. Then weight, mid upper arm circumference, head circumference, skin fold thickness, and BMI. Next, please. Now, these 3 parameters are very important parameters to assess growth of the baby. Weight for age, we take every month till 3 years of age, and then every 3 monthly. Another is length for age, and we take every 3 monthly in normal babies, and height for age 6 monthly, and weight for height every 3 monthly. This is for normal growth assessment. But if we are finding any growth derangement, then we take it very frequently. Next, please. Now, what are the equipments for measurement and technique that we'll see here? This is for taking head circumference. The tape should be non-stretchable and flexible, and we take maximum occipitofrontal diameter of the baby for taking head circumference by crossover technique. And for weight and height, we can take any digital weighing scale or spring balance. In next slide, we can see. This is showing digital weighing scale, and this gives reading directly, but this is slightly costlier. And we can use this spring balance also in village level. But here we should be careful that while taking the reading should be at the eye level. The person should take the reading should be at the eye level. Otherwise, there will be high chances of error. Next, please. This is for taking length and height of the baby. For taking length in less than 2 years with infantometer, 2 persons are required. One person will hold the hand or fix the hand in head and area, and other person will firmly press the both knees down so that it touches the surface, and then moves the mobile board, foot and board, just to touch the heel of the child, but heel should be at the right angle. And then we take the reading. This is for infantometer. And for stadiometer, the child must be barefooted and stand erect with heel, buttocks, shoulders, and occiput touches the wall. And then we take the reading again at the eye level. Otherwise, there will be chances of error. Next, please. Now, this is a very simple anthropometric parameter, mid-upper arm circumference. It is very simple and cheap, can be effectively used in communities for active case finding. It is more sensitive indicator of mortality risk than weight for height. It is less prone to mistakes, and it is used for children between 6 months to 59 months. And it is one of the important age-independent criteria indicator of malnutrition. How to take this from Allicranon to Acromion process? Midway between this, we take the reading. Next, please. It can be measured quickly and easily. It is suitable for screening large number of children and adults. What is the normal value? It is less than more than 13.5 centimeter. But if it is 11.5 centimeter, it fits into the criteria of severe acute malnutrition. Next, please. So mid-upper arm circumference alone does not appear to be appropriate for diagnosis of SAM. There are WHO criteria in which mid-upper arm circumference is one of the criteria. These criteria are visible wasting, weight for length, Z-score should be less than -3, bilateral pitting edema, and then mid-upper arm circumference. If it is less than 11.5 centimeter, then we diagnose the baby as SAM or severe acute malnutrition. Now we come to clinical assessment or clinical examination part. It is very, very important as a clinician. We should not miss any signs of vitamin or micronutrient deficiency. I have taken few signs, main signs only. This is pallor showing, this can be seen in palm and hand and in conjunctiva. This shows iron deficiency. Here pitting edema is there. That is a sign of kwashiorkor or malnutrition. Angular stomatitis. This is showing riboflavin deficiency. Then Bitot spot, or you can see keratomalacia in vitamin A deficiency. Next, please. This is again showing iron deficiency, koilonychia, but it's a very late sign. Then this is rickets showing vitamin D deficiency. Now these skin dermatosis or skin changes, this is characteristic of protein energy malnutrition. Now we come to malnutrition. Nutritional factors like improper breastfeeding techniques, weaning practices, and diet during illness influence the growth and development of a child. Maternal malnutrition, low birth weight, recurrent infections are other important factors that lead to malnutrition. Malnutrition is often found to start in the womb and can end in the tomb if it is not taken care of, if not treated properly. So these are the two severe forms of malnutrition. We can see here, these two babies are kwashiorkor babies, and this is marasmic baby or marasmus. These are the very severe forms of malnutrition. In kwashiorkor babies, we can see the edema is the hallmark of this kwashiorkor. Babies apathetic, lethargic, irritable, skin changes are there, hair changes are there, wasting is there, but it is masked by edema. So baby is very dull and lots of micronutrient deficiencies are also there. So this is kwashiorkor, and here the weight is between 60 to 80% of the expected because of edema. And it is usually present in 1 to 5 year of age group. But in marasmus, they usually present in less than 1 year. And here the baby's face is like old man's look is there. Baggy pant appearance, skin changes are there. The hallmark of this disease is wasting, generalized wasting, loss of subcutaneous fat. So and here skin changes and hair changes are less in comparison to kwashiorkor. And here appetite is good. Here appetite is very poor. So this is the difference between marasmus and kwashiorkor. That's why we have to detect malnutrition as early as possible, so to prevent these stages. Now, after taking anthropometric parameters, how to interpret these parameters? So that for that we have growth charts. But why growth charts? All children have seen potential to grow during the initial years of life. Role of ethnicity and genetics do not have any influence on rate of growth during childhood. So irrespective of whether it is a child of short parents or a child of normal height parents, if provided proper nourishment, it should approximately grow in the same manner in its first few years of life. So this is the principle of growth charts. Now in next slide, we can see different growth charts. Now these are WHO growth charts, and here this is a weight for age for girls. This is weight for age for boys. This is length or height for age for girls, and this is length or height for age for boys. And here this is the 50th centile. This is 15th, and this is 3rd centile. Here 85th and 97th centile. So between 3rd centile to 97th centile, if anthropometric reading falls, then it is almost normal. But if it is beyond 97th centile or below 3rd centile, it is alarming in all type of growth charts. So every time, whenever we assess the growth by anthropometric parameter, we should plot them in the growth charts. If the baby's height or weight is above the 97th or 3rd centile, the child should be referred to a medical advisor. Next, please. These are again WHO charts showing Z scores. This is weight for length for height for girls, and this is weight for length and height for boys. This is head circumference for girls. This is head circumference for age for boys. And here is the Z score. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, and here -1, -2, and -3. Between plus 2 to -2, it is normal. But if it is beyond this, it is abnormal. So we have to plot all anthropometric parameters according to the child and sex of the baby. So how to interpret it? If the weight for age falls between -2 to +2 Z score, it is normal. But if it is falls between -2 to -3, then it is moderate underweight. And if it is below 3rd centile, it is severe underweight. Same for length or height for age. If it is between -2 to +2, it is normal. When it is between -2 to -3, it is moderate stunting. But if it is less than -3, it is severe stunting. Weight for length between -2 to +2, it is normal. But between -2 to -3, it is moderate acute malnutrition. And if it is less than -3, it is severe acute malnutrition, which is one of the criteria for diagnosis SAM. And head circumference, if it is less than 3rd centile, it is microcephaly. Next, please. So nutrition growth monitoring and milestones. Nutrition monitoring is the holistic growth over time rather than a single measurement or percentile. So we should know what is the growth pattern of weight, height, or head circumference. If we take weight at birth, now average baby's birth weight is more than 2.5 kg. So the babies gain 30 grams per day in initial 3 months, 20 grams per day from 4 to 6 months, then 0.5 kg per month till 1 year of life. So by the age of 1 year, the child's weight is around 10 kg. Same for the height or supine length. If we take length, 3.5 centimeter per month. In first 3 months, it grows. And after that, 2 centimeter per month from 4 to 6 months, then 1.5 centimeter per month till 1 year of life. So at birth, the length is 50 centimeter, and around 1 year, it is around 75 centimeter. And same with the head circumference. At birth, it is 35 centimeter, and rate of increase is 2 centimeter per week from birth to 3 months, 1 centimeter per month from 3 to 6 months, and 0.5 centimeter per month from 6 to 12 months. And by the age of 1 year, it is around 47 centimeter. So this is growth. At the nutshell, nutrition program monitoring from 0 to 6 months. We should do complete physical assessment and counseling on identification. Follow-up assessment is required once every 15 days from the last checkup. Then weekly telephonic follow-up by the nutrition counselor, health worker, person in charge from the hospital. And then 6 months and above, again, once a month physical assessment is required. 15 days follow-up gap for physical assessment. Then weekly telephonic follow-up by the nutrition counselor, health worker or person in charge from the hospital. And for our monitoring tools are same WHO growth charts. These are separate for boys as well as girls. And we have to have photo documentation, photograph of each child during each visit or checkup in accordance with guidelines, so that we can assess the growth of the baby by comparing the photographs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehta. I now invite Dr. Subodh Singh to share his experience in implementing the nutrition program. The nutrition program at Dr. Singh's hospital has been running since 2004.
Thank you, Dr. Bhargav, for so beautifully describing nutrition, feeding, assessment, monitoring, and when to act. So that has made my job very easy. So good afternoon, all the participants, friends from West Indian countries, India and Bangladesh, and all the executives of Smile Trend who have made this webinar possible on such a beautiful platform. I only have some stories to tell after this hard science. I have many stories to tell you. And those stories emanate from my personal experiences working with thousands of cleft children under the Smile Trend partnership program. So early on, when we started treating cleft patients, we found that many patients were not coming after the first visit. And there were many patients whom we saw in camps in distant locations, and they never came up for surgeries. So we wanted to unravel this mystery of disappearing cleft patients. We realized, because some of the patients came from orphanages also, so we realized that many patients do not make it to the hospitals for surgery. So probably they're dying. So a lot of cleft patients were never reaching the hospital, and especially the girl child, because and the more the deformity they had, more the chances were that they will never reach the hospital for surgery. So there were many social aspects to it, apart from the physical difficulty in the baby for the mother to feed the baby, and a lot of ignorance. And especially in this part of the country, there was a lot of ignorance in, especially in the lower socioeconomic and educational strata of the people. And especially in large families, there was a lot of reluctance in making these children survive. But Smile Trend came in a big way. Suddenly, after a few years of work, people realized that no, these children can survive. These deformities can be corrected, and they suddenly became interested. And initially, whenever I saw this child, I gave them some feeding advice, and that was over. But then I thought this is a full-time job and somebody else should also take care of it. So our counseling staff. Can you mute this participant?
Please mute.
Dr. Dhaval Chaudhary, can you mute yourself?
Dhaval Chaudhary, Mr. Dhaval Chaudhary.
He has done it. So initially our counseling staff and a trained social worker, she worked very passionately for this job. She learned it from me. She observed me giving these feeding advices for several months. She learned it and started doing it very well. So she prepared pamphlets on her own. Then we prepared the feeding instructions and we printed it on the patient's file. We also prepared many feeding videos and displayed them at the hospital reception and gave them a copy. But these were applicable only to the patients who were visiting the hospital. There were many who never visited the hospital. But the problem with malnourished children is both in anesthesia as well as in surgery. They have a low threshold for invasive monitoring. They have more respiratory complications after the surgery. Aspiration risk is also very high, especially if they have been operated for palate. And they had increased risk of life-threatening hypoglycemia as well. In surgery, I always observed a poor healing if the patients were malnourished. There was high risk of infection. There was increased post-operative complication and sometimes serious complications as well. And there was an increased morbidity and mortality also in these malnourished children. And today, if the child is malnourished, I will never operate upon that child. We need to correct the malnutrition first. So the counseling, training, and hands-on demonstration were all done for them. So we kept utensils, like even in my chamber, I keep bottles and katori, spoon, everything by my side. So we spare no opportunity to train the mother or the grandmother if she accompanies. And we demonstrate them and make them do, especially the hygienic habits and proper method of feeding and all. So as Dr. Bhargava already explained, the best breastfeeding for the cleft baby is the best feeding. And there is usually not a problem, cleft lip baby, and there is usually not a problem except in a bilateral complete cleft or in a wide cleft. The cleft side of the lip should be kept towards the breast so that it is obliterated. And feeding a cleft palate baby is a problem, but it's a small trick that has to be learned. As Dr. Neeta already told, that it is an expressed milk which is important. Now here you have to understand that the most important thing in feeding the cleft baby is to start early. If the child reports to you after a month, or the mother comes after a month, the lactation has already ceased. And if the proper efforts were not made in the first week or a first fortnight, lactation stops. So you have to start early. As soon as you get to know about the patient or they contact you, you have to work very aggressively for the breastfeeding. Otherwise, breastfeeding will never work. So you have to start immediately after the birth, and therefore the gynecologist should send you the patient the day it has been born. The usual concept is the patient should go to the surgeon when the child is 3 months or more. So the child should report to a surgeon on the day of birth, or the parent should contact the surgeon on the same day, right? Or as early as possible, especially if there is a cleft of the palate, and the breastfeeding then can be started. And express breastfeeding into the mouth of the baby is the best method. Using the breast pump, expressing it in a katori or a spoon. If you use those things, then slowly the breast milk formation ceases to occur. Because that tactile sensation is required for that access to work. And therefore, expressed breastfeeding directly into the mouth of the cleft baby is the most important method, and it should be started as early as possible. And then, of course, there you can do a supplementary or a complementary feeding with a proper kind of milk, and you can give assisted breastfeeding at the birth. Next. So there are various feeding options available, and the mother's milk will always be on the top, and other milk substitute can be used. Animal milk should be avoided as far as possible, especially in the first year, because the protein ratio there is different from the mother's milk, and the child's kidneys are immature and they have a more high solute load, and it should be avoided. But if you're using it, some patient is using it, do not add water to it. That's the most important thing. Do not add more water to it. Next, how to feed the baby. And this is best done in a group. If you have more mothers together, you explain them together, because each one will have a different set of questions, right? And everybody will benefit with that. So giving a group counseling is always better whenever possible, give a group counseling so that, and these children are of different age, so they have different problems. So the mothers learn and understand from each other's questions and your answers. Next. Yeah, and the same thing our counselor does. So she also gives counseling in a group, or whenever there is an individual mother with a child, she will give counseling with the individual to that individual mother. Next. So what is the best method? We already discussed this. The breastfeeding is the best method. And then you can do a katori spoon feeding, bottle feeding, if it can be hygienically cleaned, as emphasized by Dr. Neeta. And special bottles and appliance, my personal view is big no. Do not use any special bottle, any special appliances. They are not useful, and they can cause the problems. The only thing that is required in the normal bottles, and especially the nipple, is to enlarge the size of the hole of the nipple using a thick bore needle, and by warming it, not by cutting with the scissors. Just warm it. You have a needle and you warm it and just push it through the hole, through the nipple to make its hole a little bigger. And it should not be so big that it should come out in a stream, right? It should come in a drop by drop, so that you do not flood the pharynx of the baby. So other things like breast pump and all, I do not advise them, but if somebody is happy with that and she is able to use, she can use. So it is important to understand that a single intervention may not fulfill all the feeding requirements of the infant, right? And a combination of methods should be used. And at the same time, I have to emphasize that a single visit cannot fulfill all the counseling requirement, and therefore you should follow them up. And how soon you should follow them? Earlier we were following them every 15 days, then we started every week, and now our protocol is for first week every day. Our counselors call them every day for the first week, then for rest 3 weeks of the month every week, and then every 15 days. This first week daily call is important, because they start doing it, because earlier there can be some reluctance or some lethargy or something. But if you get a call every day, you will start doing it. And if you have done for a week, you will continue to do that. So that pursuance is very important with the cleft mothers. Next. So this is the video that we've made. This is one of our patients. And this video was later used by Smile Train for making a video which you see on their websites. Next. So she's demonstrating. She fed that baby on her own. We had not trained her. So the baby was healthy when he came to us, and we asked the mother, how did you feed this baby? And she said, I expressed the milk and fed her. Then we asked her to demonstrate. She did. And we made a video of it. So this mother came up with this child, healthy child with cleft palate, by giving her an expressed milk. And this we continued then for all other cleft palate mothers. Next. Now, for me, a big no. So breast pump mothers can use, I do not advise them, but the other two devices, a long nipple, a long dropper, right? They are recipes for aspirations, because there is absolutely no need to deposit milk deep inside the mouth. You have to keep it on the lip, right? Because if you have, when a feeding child goes in a cycle of swallowing and breathing, swallowing and breathing. So if there is too much of milk in the pharynx and the child has swallowed and still there is a milk in the pharynx, the next thing the child is going to do is breathe. Then the milk can go into the trachea. So too much of milk should never be deposited in the pharynx. So this is one precaution that we greatly emphasize with all mothers, that do not pour milk deep inside the mouth. Do not pour too much of milk inside the mouth, as Dr. Neeta also told. So these are the two most important precautions. Rest, anything can be done. So then the common mistakes that I found was excessively diluted formula milk, right? Putting one spoon of milk in a bottle, in a 150 ml of water, diluted cows or buffalo milk, unhygienic utensils, very common, right? And as far as the Paladay is concerned, I do not advise Paladay here, because the mothers here will dip their fingers into the milk and the child will get frequent diarrheas. So then force feeding and also the tube feeding. So these are the common mistakes. So, or feeding the crying baby, feeding deep inside the mouth, and too much of milk poured at a time, and a strict scheduling of feeding. If the child is hungry and his diapers are not wet, right? Feed the baby. Do not have a strict schedule of feeding. So, and the most common mistakes here in our part of the country is diluting the milk if the child has diarrhea. And that dilution, they think that it was because the milk was too concentrated, the child is having diarrhea, and then on they will feed very diluted milk and the child will become malnourished. So no matter what method is employed, great care must be taken, I'm emphasizing it again, not to flood the pharynx and thereby provoke aspiration. So of course, burping, frequent burping, these cleft palate babies have more of aerophagia compared to other children, and therefore they require frequent burping. So I advise them to do burping every 5 minutes, so feed and burp, feed and burp. So one feeding session in cleft palate children might take 30 minutes to 40 minutes. So during this time, you should burp 4 or 5 times at least, not just once after the feeding session is over. Next. So now you have to take a detailed history, as Dr. Neeta told, and you have to find out what is the type of milk, what is the quantity of milk, what dilution they are using, are they using hygienic technique or not. So most of the women will hold the spoon like this, putting their finger in the spoon like this, or a katori like this. So not from outside. So their contaminated fingers will contaminate the milk. So these, you have to find out how to do it, what kind of water they're using, what method of feeding they're using, and what they feed more than the milk. If they're using water, jaggery, sabudana. So you need to dig out all this information. So once you start doing it, you will find a spectrum of problems, and you should note down. So you will have an idea of what problems you have in your part of the country. So these problems may be different in different part of the country. So for example, the hygiene problem may be different, may not be present in some of the areas, but in some areas they may be present. So then you have to identify the needy family, not just the patient, needy family. And understand that poverty is not the only criteria to provide the feeding support or the nutritional support to the baby. You have to find the child in need, a child of a poor parent or illiterate parents or careless parents. So that child is in need. And sometimes the child may be ignored or abused child. If you notice there is a girl child with severe deformity, it should alarm a bell. It should ring a bell, right? You should be very alarmed, right? So this girl child may be neglected by her own family. So I see more number of girl children getting malnourishment and dying than the male children. And especially if they're in large families, because large families, they will have a lot of social pressure. So in a nuclear family, they may not have. But in large families, they will have social pressure. These incidences are going down thanks to Smile Train. So because they know that now they can be treated. Now, if the mother is in crisis, that's also a very important, that family is in need, that child is in need. If the mother is in some kind of crisis, then you should be very, very careful. And if the child is getting frequent sickness, then you should be alarmed and take care of the child more intensively. Next. Now, you have to find out what is wrong and make a note of it, document it. So soon you will understand the common problems in your area. And then specifically ask for those common problems in the follow-up visits or when you are making a call. Then plan a method to rectify it. And this plan has to be innovative, right? So, that plan will be for that particular patient, for that particular area, for that particular family. It has to be tailor-made. Because same method will not work in all patients. And again, document it and look for that plan. How did that plan work in the follow-up? Then set goals, and your goals should be realistic goals. But to the patient, tell a little more than what you wish to achieve, right? Like tell them you want a weight gain of 500 grams in 15 days. Then you also set goals for hygiene, care, and follow-up visits. So all these things, you have to set goals for all these things, not just for anthropometric measurements and weight gains. Next. Next, can you change the slide, please? Yeah. So again, we started adding red flags when we found something was going wrong. So when we add the red flags, when the child shows deterioration on 2 consecutive follow-up visits over 2 weeks, when we find the parents appear to neglect the child, and you should have a very high index of suspicion for that, right? So if the child is not gaining weight, you have to dig out and find out if the parents are neglecting. If the mother is ill-treated physically or psychologically, and you should have a high index of suspicion, and it is a good idea to speak with the mother in isolation, not with the entire large family when they come for consultation. And when the mother has been left continuously at her parents' place, now this is a sure indication that mother is under tremendous psychological pressure for giving birth to a cleft child. So, and I have hundreds of such stories. So when mother is not given a phone, everybody in the family has phone, the mother does not have a phone to communicate with you. When the parents are reluctant to talk, when you are making a call and they are giving some reason or other for not telling you the progress of the child, then identify the cause. What is the cause? And get them to take the child to a pediatrician if the child is not progressing well. And if he falls sick or shows continuous deterioration, arrange a visit to patient's home if it is needed. Call the patients frequently. Now, many times I have gone and informed the district authorities. When I've noticed that the parents have been neglecting for some reason, I have called up the district magistrates or chief medical officers of the district, informed everything about the child, and asked them to take care of that child. And believe me, it has worked every time, because then they know that they are being watched by the district authorities also. So do what it takes to save life. This is not just nutrition. This is saving life, a life which will continue to live for 70, 80 years, right? So if you act early, you'd go an extra mile, you can save that child. So the frequent counseling of all involved is important. And if it is needed, you talk to the in-laws or parents of the mother as well. And you can call the Pradhan of the village and our community health workers. Now, all these phone numbers are now available. Some of your staff can find out that Pradhan's number and you can call them. So now when the parents know that everybody knows about this and everybody also knows that I'm not taking care of the child well, then they will be encouraged to take care of the child better and you will save one life. Next. So as I said, each patient is assigned 2-3 pages in a register. Basic information is written on the top. Each communication is mentioned. Whatever they say, it is in their language, it is mentioned. So, and then we know when they know how many times the child was called, what responses were given, and they take follow-up data like weight, sickness, or diet and record it and plot it on a growth chart. We even plot the data that parents have given us. And then when the child visits us, then we take a measurement ourselves and then compare. Next. So we record it on a chart and measure everything every time they come and see how they are going, whether they are progressing or they're still in the danger zone. And we demonstrate them, that we tell them that, look, you are still in the danger zone. You're not doing well. You have to enter into the green. Next. So the persuasion, encouragement, admonition, everything that will work, you have to do. So there are umpteen examples of children who have done well. Now this Lakshmi, for this Lakshmi, we were working very hard, but the child was not improving. So we did approach the district administration, and the senior officers visited her home. It was a poor family, but then, and they also supported the family. They financially and material wise, the district authorities supported that family. This Lakshmi improved, and she was then operated, and the parents were happy that the sufficient care was taken, and the district authorities also took care of them. Next. So our counselor will provide them everything that they require to take care of the child, all feeding material besides the counseling. Next. Next, please. So now this is a story that I want to tell every surgeon. Now this patient, this mother went with the patient to a postgraduate medical college with a huge plastic surgery department, not once, 8 times. And every time she was told, the child is not fit enough for surgery, come later when the child is doing well. So she traveled 600 kilometers and came to my hospital. So we did everything. We examined the child, a pediatrician saw that child. We provided all the materials to her, did a good counseling and sent them. Next day morning, when I was taking my breakfast, and this picture I had taken, come to the previous picture, please. So I was thinking about this child, and I had this picture on my mobile. I suddenly thought I did not do any better than the medical college plastic surgery department. I sent this child back. So I immediately called the hospital to call them. This family was sitting at the railway station waiting for the train. I called them back. Then this patient was kept in the hospital for 24 days and under the supervision of a very senior pediatrician. We took care of, we took consent, because when you manage such kind of malnutrition, the child may become further sick and sometimes they die. Next slide, please. But we kept the child in our hospital for 24 days. He improved a lot. Then we gave further feeding advice and called them back after a month or so. Next slide. Next slide, please. So before they were going, we always also gave, because child was become 6 months, so we always also gave them a solid food material. And this was a child, when he came to us at the age of 5 months, 2.4 kg, and again at the age of 7 months, weighing 6.3 kgs. So this is a miracle that your advice can do, your counseling can do, this nutritional program can do. Now, both her lip and palate both have been operated. And I cannot describe you how happy I feel when I see this picture. Next. Again, there were many more such children who improved with our nutrition program, and we got healthy patients for surgery. And next. So we continue to provide not only milk, but also iron and vitamin supplements to them. Next. Next. All utensils, solid food materials, everything we started providing them. Milk. Next. So this is again, she came from the neighboring city and the child was very malnourished. So we started supporting that child. So soon the child became well, and child was posted for surgery. But when I looked at the mother, she was too pale. And then I asked for a hemoglobin of that mother, and hemoglobin was 6 grams. So very poor and vulnerable people may have to make harsh choices for survival of their children, and they knowingly put their own health, especially the mothers, because they cannot see their children go hungry. So we have to identify the family in crisis. So we supported the mother also. Now the mother is doing well, and she's healthy as well. Next. But then that gave us an idea that a lot of our women folks are malnourished. So when they're coming to our hospital, we are getting one opportunity to test their hemoglobin. So we started testing hemoglobin of all females who accompanied any cleft children or any children or any patient for that matter in our hospital. And we find as many as 30% of them have significant anemia. And we treat them and advise further treatment, and we send them to other specialists if needed. But this gives an opportunity to treat anemia in women. And believe me, it is much common than we might be willing to believe. As many as 30% women who come to my hospital have severe or significant anemia. So thank you very much for patient listening. And being a surgeon, right, I got involved in a nutritional program, and I'm very happy that I did it, because I was missing out on many patients. I was not getting them to operate. So as a surgeon also, I am getting benefited. And as a citizen, I can see that my own fellow citizens and future generations are getting healthier by a little of my attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Subodh. Thank you so very much for sharing your experience. And thank you, Dr. Bhargav, for taking the technical bit part, and Dr. Subodh explaining the partner perspective. So for the audience here today, we have seen both things, and a lot of you have already started nutrition programs at your hospitals. Few of you are wanting to start, and Smile Train's aim is that every cleft project at a hospital, Smile Train supported, should have a nutrition program. So the first step is, if you don't have a nutrition program, please do identify a team. Please get in touch with your area program manager. He or she is going to guide you how to set up and implement this program, because the ultimate aim, the expected outcome, as Dr. Subodh beautifully put in, is that the cleft child should be treated. And the child should be at the right age with right birth weight and hemoglobin. That's to be taken up for surgery. Please go very, very thoroughly and carefully with the safety and quality protocol of Smile Train. Children who do not meet the requirement, surgery requirement, are to be treated under the nutrition program. And the nutrition program, there are basic 2 steps where Smile Train is providing support. We will guide you, we will help you, we will make you go through what counseling support should be given to the parents. Feeding advice should be given, which is age-appropriate feeding. The funding support for nutrition program will take care of all the aspects, which is getting the team in place, the nutritionist in place. When the complementary feed starts or a supplementary feed is to be given to patient. So what sort of equipment is required? Dr. Subodh and Dr. Neeta specifically said that a bottle should not be given because of the hygiene issue. So Smile Train program will help you fund for giving these children those katori and chammach or whatever equipment, feeding appliance you need to give to the family. Top feed, formula milk. There could be all sort of grains and all sort of supplementary feeding that needs to be given. And yes, there's a step-by-step approach to the Smile Train nutrition program. Obviously, number 1 is the assessment of malnutrition in the child. Then counseling, which is again age-appropriate counseling. Could be feeding, could be hygiene, everything combined, could be psychosocial support under this big umbrella of nutrition that the parents and their families will require. And yes, as any program goes, we have to document it very, very properly and monitor the progress of the child so that the child is taken off for surgery at the right age. So that is, in a nutshell, Smile Train Nutrition Program for each and every one of you. As I said in the beginning when I started speaking, if you don't have the nutrition program, we want a nutrition program at your hospital. So please get basics ready. Identify a space, whatever equipment is required, please procure that equipment. Then contact your area manager. We will tell you how to implement the nutrition program. And just start and help as many as cleft children as you can. And we have resources for partners and families to help you through this. There's a toolkit which will be released very shortly. We will share it with each one of you. And we already have a feeding video. Please use that feeding video extensively, liberally. It is such a beautiful feeding video which has been as a resource for quite some time. It's more than, I think, so 8 or 9 years we have been using this feeding video. And any other help that we can give it to you, we are always there. Our team is always there. So thank you so much. We can now take questions. If any one of you has questions, please type in the chat box or raise your hands and we will take question and answers.
Renu, one question. This feeding video is available on the net?
Yes, Mahmood, I will share the link with you, and it is in languages. English also is there, Hindi also is there. I have to check whether Urdu is there or not, but English and Hindi definitely would.
English is okay. No issue.
Sure. We'll share the link with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I want to ask, can we use measuring tape for assessing the length of the patient and also the head circumference? Can measuring tape be used for that?
Dr. Neeta, could you please take this question?
Yes, we can use measuring tape, but it should be non-stretchable, flexible, and it should not alter with temperature setting. So that measuring tape you can use. But we should make it that whenever you are taking the reading, it should be crossover-like, not exactly same reading. You cross over the tape and then you minus the reading. And it should be non-stretchable tape.
Okay. So how effective is the goat milk as compared to the cow's milk? Hello?
Sorry, only I listened the last part. Goat milk, actually, we don't recommend because if continuously we are feeding the child with goat milk, it causes folic acid deficiency. So normally, we don't recommend goat milk. And after 1 year, we can give cow milk, but not before that. We first prefer always breast milk and then breast milk substitutes, formula milk.
Okay.
Dr. Sanjeev, I saw your hand. Yeah.
A very informative session. My question is regarding that video, feeding video. Do you have a Hindi version of it, or can you provide me?
Yes, there is a Hindi version also, and there is a WhatsApp version also. So we will share all the versions with you. The next one, I think so, is from Ganga Medical College.
Good evening, madam. There is any funding assistance for feeding mothers per se?
I didn't get your question. What sort of funding help are you looking for mothers?
The lactating mothers are coming from below poverty family. There is any sort of assistance in terms of funding?
Yeah, most definitely, because if the mother is not fit to feed, then how can she give breast milk to the child? So please include it into the nutrition program. Salma.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
As I said earlier, I'm a speech therapist, but I do the feeding help for the kids with cleft palate in Lebanon and with Global Smile. So I had a question about the bottles. We provide Dr. Brown specialty feeding bottles to the children that we see with Global Smile. And these bottles seem to work very well because they teach the child to pace themselves and to self-feed, and it's not guided by the mother's desire to feed at the rate that she's feeding. So I was wondering why the recommendation for not using bottles. Is it just for the hygiene so that you know, the kids don't catch all those diseases or bacteria or viruses or whatever? Is it because they don't know how to maintain the hygiene of those bottles, or is there another medical reason why you don't use them?
Dr. Neeta, I think so both Dr. Neeta and Dr. Subodh's perspective would be very important over here. So let's start with Dr. Neeta first and then Dr. Subodh.
Actually, in our country, in India, we don't recommend bottle. First thing is that bottle is not available in India and it is costly. So in being a poor country, everybody cannot afford that. Second thing is the hygiene point is very, 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 very important in our country. Even if after full counseling and full feeding advice also, they don't maintain the hygiene. So recurrent infections and not giving proper bottle feeding is a big problem in our country. So we don't recommend. And as Dr. Subodh has insisted, if long teeth bottle nipple is there, then it will pour the milk very behind the pharynx. That can increase the chances of aspiration. So normally in our country, in our setup, we don't recommend bottles. Dr. Subodh, please.
Yeah, I said no for the bottles and no for the special bottles, not for the ordinary simple bottles, because no, we know it that since the very beginning, like Haberman bottles and so many different kinds of bottle came up, and they were used for decades for cleft palate, and they are still being used at many places. And I believe that most of them came up because of the erroneous beliefs and erroneous understanding of feeding in a cleft palate baby. There's so many things that do not work, and the bottles were seen as an answer to that, right? So there is absolutely no reason why a normal bottle and a normal nipple cannot be used. Only thing that you have to do is enlarge the hole of the nipple. So it will work. You do not need a long teeth nipples because there is a danger of aspiration. And of course, in a country like India, hygiene is extremely important. And when we were students, our teacher told that these feeding bottles should be wrapped in death certificate and sold. But now you can train the mothers how to sterilize these bottles. So and you can provide them a set of half a dozen bottles and they can do it. So they cannot sterilize bottle 10 times a day. And then if they have just one bottles. And as far as special bottles are concerned, if it is working well for you, please go ahead and continue using it. As far as palatal obturators and feeding appliances are concerned, there are hundreds of papers published, and hundreds of those doctors have conveyed it to me that it doesn't work. Hundreds of patients have conveyed it to me, it doesn't work. There is no way that a feeding appliance can create a negative pressure inside the mouth. So the problem will remain same as there. But as far as your specific bottle that you are using, and if it is working for you, and if the hygiene can be maintained, please go ahead and use it. And that was just my experience in our part of the country. And that's why I said no to those bottles.
Okay. No, the Dr. Brown's bottle don't have the long nipple. They have just a standard nipple, but they have a one-way valve. So they don't require the negative pressure inside the child's mouth, and the child expresses the milk at the rate that they can manage. There are also
but for that, the child has to be a little bit older.
No. I give it from birth. No, from birth, because all it requires is pressure on the teeth, and that's all. So the child just needs to put pressure on the teeth, and if you just stimulate the gum a little bit, they'll do that automatically, and the milk remains in the teat. So as it's expressed, it will attract more milk into the nipple. And when you stand the bottle up, it will not go back in the bottle.
No problem.
It's a really,
if it is working, it should be used.
Yeah, it is. But I do understand the fact that it's an expensive bottle, and that it's not a solution for people who cannot afford to have more than one bottle, and who maybe cannot maintain the hygiene with it.
Yeah,
thank you for your answers. Thank you.
Renu, there are a couple of questions in the chat box. So,
sure.
Sabah Fatima, she's asking if a patient is malnourished and are not able to breastfeed or are neglected by parents, which formula milk should we give to them?
Nita?
Actually, we always prefer breast milk. And if breast milk is not at all available, then what is the age of the child?
Not mentioned in the chat box,
not
but
Sabah,
maybe you
could, 1 year. Yes, in less than 1 year, we don't recommend animal milk, but breast milk substitutes, formula milks, and number of formula milks are available in the market. So in malnutrition, actually, first we have to correct the malnutrition. So that for that, specialized feeding formulas are there, and feeding food packages are there. Just we make F75 feeding, F75 feeds that contains 75 calories per 100 ml. After that, we switch over to 100 ml isodense formula, and after that, normal formula feeding. So if the child is less than 6 months, then milk is the only diet. We can start formula milk after correcting the malnutrition part. But after 6 months, along with the milk, other food supplements are required. And but we have to admit the child according to status of the malnutrition, whether mild, moderate, or severe. We have to correct malnutrition. If the child starts gaining weight, we have to take care of micronutrient deficiency, supplements all nutrients, and then we have to discharge the child after proper counseling. But one animal milk, cow milk, or maybe start after 1 year.
Thank you, Dr. Nita.
But problem of affordability is there. Then
yes.
Then we can use after 6 months we can use cow milk, but otherwise we don't recommend below 1 year.
Thank you. The other question is, can supplements in the form of medicine like iron, calcium be given at an early age, like 1 month or before?
Yes, actually it depends upon whether the baby is term baby or preterm baby. If the baby is born after 37 weeks, that means term baby is there, then in normal term babies, supplement only vitamin D supplementation is recommended, 400 international unit per day from birth to 1 year of age. And we add iron after 3 months of age, 3 milligram per kg per day. This is for normal babies. But if the baby is preterm, that means born before 37 weeks, then he or she needs supplementation, multivitamins, iron, calcium, vitamin D, all supplements till 1 year of age.
Thank you.
Are there more questions, Sheila, in the chat box?
No, those were the only two.
We are over with questions, and it is not that this webinar will end and we will stop answering questions. You can contact us anytime, your area program manager anytime, to get any questions answered, and we will connect you to the right people. If you need to get some information from Dr. Nita Bhargav, we can connect you there. We also have a nutrition advisor with us, Dr. Padmasini, who's been assisting us. So we can connect you to Dr. Padmasini, Dr. Subodh anytime. Over to you, Mamta.
Yeah, thank you everyone for participating. As Dr. Bhargav and Dr. Subodh have, I think, stressed not once, I think many times, the importance of nutrition and cleft nutrition specifically for children with clefts. I think it's absolutely important that we shift from a very, treating the child just going straight into surgery or other therapies and looking at a comprehensive care. And I think comprehensive care starts with nutrition. So can't stress enough the importance of nutrition. So the first thing that we need to do is look at a child in terms of the nutritional status of the child immediately the moment the child is brought into our hospitals and things. And Smile Train's support is 100% for all partners who have registered for the CLEFT nutrition program, so that whatever support that you require, definitely funding, yes, that's the most important, but also in terms of know-how, in terms of rolling out the program, that is unwavering. We are committed to nutrition programs, and definitely the aim is to have all of the partners do some form of nutrition or the other in country, and especially in the Asia region, starting with West Asia and other parts of Asia. Also, we are expanding in Southeast Asia as well. So we are looking at growing our CLEFT programs globally. So can't stress enough the importance of nutrition, and you don't need to get into the technicalities, specifically those who may get overwhelmed that you need to start, when you need to start your CLEFT program, you have to have a nutritionist or you have to have a pediatrician rolling them out. I think, yes, those are ideal situations. Yes, if you really want to have a very successful nutrition program, that these are the two experts that you have to have on your team, but it doesn't really matter. Even if you just have a counselor or a person who can be trained to be a counselor and to deliver your nutrition programs, I think you're good to go. We will help you train that person as well. So all you need is a dedicated person and a little bit of, a small little space, some stationery and some very, very simple items, as Dr. Bhargav has already spoken about, to start your nutrition program. And that's all you need. It's the most easiest part of the comprehensive CLEFT care, but the most important one. So thank you, everyone. And we look forward to your active participation. And please get in touch with us immediately for rolling out the CLEFT, the nutrition programs at your centers. So thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.